Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Sasa's fourth annual virtual conference, Opening the Ancient World. My name is Wen, and as Sasa's conference team co-lead and one of the organizers, I would like to express how happy we are to have all of you join us today and tomorrow. This year's conference theme is Representations of the Past in Ancient and Modern Times. I'm going to spend the next several minutes giving some introductory remarks, after which we will move on to our first session. First, I will introduce myself and our virtual conference team members. And next, David Denzig, Sasa's founder and executive director, will explain what Sasa is and give you a taste of our goals and programming. Finally, we will explain the conference's format, where it is being live streamed, and how you can participate. Again, my name is Wen. I hold a PharmD from the University of Connecticut and an MA in Egyptology from the University of Manchester. I've been a part of Sasa since 2021, and this is the third year that I'm helping with the virtual conference team. I am also a board member and the newsletter editor for the New York chapter of the American Research Center in Egypt, and a member of the South SSC Conservation Project, currently excavation at Luxor. This year's conference is supported by a generous grant from the Wenner-Gren Foundation, and I'm excited to announce that the grant enabled Sasa to implement live interpretation into both Spanish and Arabic during this conference. This greatly expands the diversity of attendees and helps Sasa continue our mission of promoting the study of the ancient world and inspiring a wide, inclusive community of scholars, learners, and students. I would also like to thank Interprenet, who is partnering with us over the next 2 days to provide live translation. This year's conference could not have happened without the amazing work and dedication of my virtual conference team members. First, Julie Levy, Sasa's managing director, has helped us lead the virtual conference team and organize the Archeo Gaming special session that is taking place tomorrow afternoon. If you haven't RSVP'd for this session yet, I strongly encourage you to do so, and you can do so on our virtual conference website. We also have Mamie Kerr, who is the team co-leader and is an art historian and visual art scholar, writer, and curator. With her background in art, she will be moderating tomorrow morning's art and aesthetics session. I would also like to thank Razan and Andy, who have been instrumental in helping us translate the conference materials in Arabic and Spanish, and for facilitating outreach with our new partners. Andy, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. So hello, everyone. My name is Andy. I am an intern here at Sasa. I assisted in the virtual conference, and I graduated from UCI in 2023 with a degree in business economics and psychology with a minor in history. But yeah, I'm excited to have you all here today.
Thank you, Andy. And lastly, I would like to introduce David Denzig, Sasa's founder and executive director.
Hello, everyone. Hi, Ann. Thanks for introducing me. Ann, can you hear me on the stream?
Yep, I can hear you, David. Thank you for joining us this morning.
Hello? Hello, everyone. Hi, Ann. Thanks for introducing me. Can you hear me on the stream?
Yep, I can hear you, David. Thank you for joining us this morning.
Hello? Okay. Hello, everyone. Hi, Ann. Thanks for introducing me.
Hi everyone, I'm back. David had a couple of technical difficulties, so I'm going to take over and do part of his introduction for him while we wait. So David has started Sasa over 3 years ago, and in that time we've had the wonderful pleasure of benefiting from the time and effort of over 300 volunteers and interns. The mission of Save Ancient Studies Alliance is to promote ancient studies in order to reverse the current downward trend in the study of the ancient world. And by building a grassroots movement through outreach, collaboration, accessibility, and public scholarship, we work towards our goal of inspiring a wider, inclusive community of learners and students. Sasa's projects and programs are based in 7 strategic areas, which we call the Sasa Arc. By working on each of these areas, we are revitalizing ancient studies as a vibrant, inclusive, accessible, and widespread area of knowledge, study, and engagement. First, we have Know What You Know, which is educational sociology and marketing research about ancient studies. Next, raising awareness and generating interest in the ancient world, highlighting the value of ancient studies as our source of knowledge for the ancient world. Third, we're supporting education by supporting formal and informal ancient studies learning at all educational levels. Fourth, we're increasing accessibility by increasing access to ancient studies for all. And we do this by providing a lot of free programs and classes to the members of the public. Fifth, by forming an alliance, we encourage ancient study fields to come together and make public outreach integral to our work, in addition to teaching and scholarship. This one of the wonderful things about a virtual conference such as this weekend, where we have scholars from different backgrounds and areas of ancient studies come together and contribute their research to a common theme. Sixth, we're re-envisioning post-education scholarship, and by creating a wider inclusive community of ancient studies scholars and students, and we're able to integrate people of all backgrounds. And lastly, advocacy, and we help advocate on behalf of departments and institutions that are experiencing difficulties.
Hi, Ann. Thanks for the assistance there. Sorry, my Zoom just crashed, everybody. This is why you have backups. Always a little choppy getting started this conference, but everything's working well now. Thank you all for being here. Over the next 2 days, Interspersed between our wonderful academic presentations, you'll learn about the many projects Sasa is working on to attack the problem on each of these 7 fronts. Our Archaeogaming education program was supported this past year by the New Jersey Council for the Humanities and the initiative Humanities for the Public Good of the University of North Carolina. We have completed 6 modules which have been used in middle school programs across the United States and have just received more funding from NGHCH to work on 2 more modules. And actually, I'd like to announce that the National Endowment for the Humanities has just awarded us a grant to support our work in making archaeogaming education modules for the undergraduate level and piloting them in 3 community colleges across the country. Our free online reading groups were supported this summer by a grant for the Gladys Kriebel-Dellens Foundation and feature topics ranging from the Mesopotamians to the Vikings to the Aztecs. Participants come from around the world, and I think there's still a few reading groups running. You can go sign up for them right now. Our Ancient Studies Resources database covers websites with excellent content about ancient cultures and on all continents across the world. It has over 1,400 vetted websites and counting. Our free online events have attracted thousands of participants, and we're working on starting up some new projects, including our mentorship program for high school seniors and college freshmen and sophomores, which we aim to begin this fall. I encourage you to read our 3rd annual report on our website to learn more about the wonderful things Sasa has been doing. Now, I'd like to explain a little bit about the Sasa Virtual Conference. This 4th year, we're all happy to have you, and we think it's going to reach an even wider audience than before. The conference is intended for all ancient studies scholars and anyone interested in the ancient world. In presenting an academic conference in an open access online format, advertised as widely as we can, we have 3 goals in mind: to hold an academic conference freely available to the public, to foster discussion and action regarding public outreach and scholarly inclusiveness, to present and support excellent scholarship by independent scholars across the world in order to continue building a joint community of scholars, including both those whose occupations are inside in academia and those who are outside of academia. As An mentioned before, the topic of this year's conference is representations of the past in ancient and modern times. Let me explain what that means a little bit. While the issues of reception, representation, and the use of the past in modern times have been hot topics in recent decades, there's a whole burgeoning field called reception studies. This has been mainly the case in connection with Western colonialism and contemporary mass media representations of the past. This narrow focus, thinking about representations of pasts, misses the universality of the cultural exercise of representing the past and connecting with it. This conference employs the framework of interdisciplinary ancient studies, the study of the deep past of all societies, exploring the reception and representation of the past in present and ancient societies, removing the privileging of our contemporary temporal position by intertwining current and past explorations of the past, of any past, either the past from now or the past from a certain time in the past, treats the issue as a human cultural construction in all societies. So over the next 2 days, in addition to our 3 wonderful keynote speakers, we're excited to have 20 presenters who will give academic presentations about representations of the past in ancient and modern times. Our presenters come from numerous spheres of life. They are independent researchers, PhD students and candidates, university and community college lecturers, high school teachers, archaeologists, and art historians. Before we start the conference, I'd like to go over the schedule a little bit so everybody will know what to expect going on. An, would you mind sharing the schedule if you could on your screen? So the way the conference works is that there are 3 types of sessions. There are presenter sessions, keynote sessions, and special sessions. The presenter sessions are the bread and butter. They are our presenters talking about their scholarship. Each session is 30 minutes long. About 20 minutes is scheduled for the presentation and 10 minutes for Q&A. The keynote sessions last an hour and also have feature Q&A at the end. And then there's one special session that's going to take place tomorrow about archaeogaming. For each of these sessions, we ask everyone who is viewing to actively participate in the session. And the way you can do that is by submitting your questions and comments in the chat box wherever you're watching the conference, and then they will be posed to the presenters at the moderator's discretion. Also, please feel free to discuss the conference on Twitter or X using the hashtag OAW conference. That stands for Opening the Ancient World. And let me explain the format of how we present this to you. The conference is live streaming to you through a number of different channels. You can be watching this on Sasa's webpage, saveancientstudies.org/virtual-conference, but it also is streaming on Sasa's social media, Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, and our Twitter, and also on our wonderful partner social media pages, Digital Hammurabi's YouTube, World History Encyclopedia, Voices of Ancient Egypt, World of Antiquity, Persepolis Studios, New Classicists, History with Kayleigh, and Historia en 5 Minutos. We thank our live streaming partners and applaud their role in bringing quality ancient studies content to their viewerships. So, welcome to the conference. We're so happy to have you all here today. Please pop in and out of the conference all day, today and tomorrow, and join us wherever you are watching. I'd like to send things back to our moderator, An, and we'll get started with our first little presentation.
Great, thank you, David. To screen share again. All right, so to kick things off for the conference, we have a very special presentation today by Jan van der Krabben from World History Encyclopedia. Jan is the founder and CEO of World History Encyclopedia, which is the world's most read history publication. It is run as a non-profit organization with a mission to engage people with cultural heritage and to improve history education worldwide. Jan has worked in the field of history-related digital media since 2006 and holds an MA in World Studies from King's College London, as well as a BA in journalism from the University of East London. And so thank you, Jan. You can start sharing your presentation now. Excited to have you here today with us.
Thank you for having me. It's an honor to be here and to be the first one to present, which is always a little bit daunting. So here we are. So I'm gonna share my screen right now, which I think should be the case, and then start my slideshow. Right, so today I'm going to talk about translating at World History Encyclopedia. As David so kindly mentioned, we are one of the partners of Save Ancient Studies Alliance. We've been partnering, I think, since pretty much the very beginning of the that initiative. So it's a great honor to be here. And today we're going to speak about translation. Now, I think this is partly topical because this is the first time that the Save Ancient Studies conference is translated into Spanish and Arabic. So that's why we thought maybe we can start talking about translation right now. I'm going to keep this rather short because I know everybody's really keen to get the history topics covered, the latest things from Save Ancient Studies. So I don't want to take up too much time, but I'm structuring this quite simply into 3 sections. The first one is an introduction to World History Encyclopedia, so who we are and what we do. I am going to keep that as short as I can because I think some of you may have already seen something like that in previous years of this conference where I have presented. Then I'm going to talk about World History Encyclopedia's translation strategy. And finally, I'm going to talk about how we have embedded the translation strategy into our editorial review process by using technology. So I'm going to just start out a little bit about us. So World History Encyclopedia, as already mentioned so kindly by Anne, we are the most read history publication on the internet, and probably there is. We are run as a non-profit organization that launched in 2009. So this year, next month, actually, we are going to celebrate our 15th anniversary, which we're very excited about. Our mission is to engage people with cultural heritage and to improve history education worldwide. Now, worldwide is kind of the key word here for this presentation, because in order to reach people worldwide, we need to go beyond English. We launched the website in English because, of course, that is the language that, is kind of the most international language. But particularly in education, in school education, if we want to reach people all over the world, we definitely need more than just English, because students in particular are not necessarily at the level of English language speaking that they would want to look up history information for their studies in English, but rather in their own language. And on the right here, I have one of our little posters, History Grows the Mind. I think I preach to the choir here when I say that history as an academic discipline is quite uniquely positioned, I think, to help people with their critical thinking skills, in particular in relation to the present and the future, as well as where we come from. Because only if we understand the historical sort of trends that have occurred around the world, not just in our own countries, can we, I think, really understand where we are now and how we could build a better future. We have around 86 million views per year on our website from around 45 million readers on 4,000, almost 100 articles that are published on our website. And we've partnered with organizations such as Save Ancient Studies, as well as UNESCO and others. We are recommended by Oxford University in the School Library Journal and many other publications and universities and schools as well. And it is particularly in the school system that we are used a lot as an encyclopedia, as a resource for students to learn more. Now, in terms of geography, maybe unsurprisingly, given that we started out in English, North America is where most of our readers come from, 42%, followed by Latin America. This has really grown since we started to translate into other languages, followed by Europe and other continents. In terms of the languages in which people read, it's about 65% who read our articles in the English language. And about 25% in Spanish, followed by French, and then the other 40-odd languages that we translate into. So now I want to talk a little bit about our strategy for translation, because it has changed over time. Step back. First, it's important to note that as a policy at World History Encyclopedia, all submissions that get published on the website must be reviewed by our editorial team, and we review them not only to ensure that they are factually accurate, but also that they are quite well written and easy to understand, and we do this before it's published. So it's not like a wiki-based model. And even though, we're not all as pretty as this stock model photo that I found here, we often have that kind of look on our face when our editorial team reviews submissions, because we receive all sorts of crazy submissions and we reject over half of them. In terms of the process, so the authors submit always in English, the articles, and then they go through the editorial review, which involves multiple steps, including fact-checking, proofreading, textual editing, and verifying that it complies with our style guide and our editorial policy. And our editorial team works with the authors to ensure that all of that is sort of sorted. And once it's all finalized in English and published, then our translation team will start looking at it and translating these articles into other languages. And then each translation in each language is also reviewed before the translation is published. Now, we haven't always translated. In fact, we started translating only around 2020, but we first considered translating in 2015. And at that time, we decided against doing it. We thought at the time that translating these thousands of articles into other languages is just going to be very, very expensive. And the other thing that we thought, and we didn't know how to resolve, is we needed editors who could understand all of these languages that we translate into in order to review the submissions of translations before they get published, because, you know, of our policy. And at that time, we couldn't really figure out how to overcome these two sort of problems. Now, what we found since then is that, in fact, there are volunteers for many different things, including translations, to be found everywhere. I think translation in particular, it's both a very skilled job, but also an unskilled job. And to make that point a bit clearer, it's a bit like cooking. So you've got these, you know, top chefs, Michelin star, and so on. These are people with an extremely high level of skill. They have trained for it, and they have worked hard. They have a lot of experience, and they produce things that are way above what any of us can do. However, most people are able to cook a perfectly yummy meal, which works for everybody. And translation is a little bit like that as well. As long as somebody can speak two languages fluently, they can translate between these two languages at a sort of good enough level. Not at the Michelin star level, of course. That's where the professional translators come in. And we are very lucky because we actually have many translators, professional translators, who volunteer for us as well in several languages. So we count ourselves blessed, but we have many other volunteer translators who are, you know, like the everyday cooks who are not necessarily professionals in the field, but it works perfectly fine. So, as I mentioned, in 2020, we then started this immense job of translating our encyclopedia into over 40 languages. Now, the main thing that changed is that not only had we realized that volunteers were available for this, but the other thing is that technology has really moved on. In the last few years, machine translation has improved massively, largely driven by the advent of improved artificial intelligence technology that gets embedded into machine translation services like DeepL, Google Translate, and Amazon Translate. Also, we got better ourselves. Our server technology had improved and our sort of expertise and skill at programming things. So what we ended up doing is building a tool that allowed us to reverse translate translations back into English in order to be able to review them in any language. And let's look how that works. So first of all, we have a team of translation editors who are sort of dedicated to the review process. We have Babette, who heads up that team, as well as our 4 translation editors, 2 for Spanish, 1 for German, and 1 for Italian. And it's really this editorial team that makes it possible to translate the encyclopedia alongside the hundreds of volunteers that we have to translate. So I thank all of them very deeply for doing all this work and making it possible. Now, when a translation is submitted to our website, it first gets sort of reserved by the translator so that we don't have a second translator who wants to translate the same article. That was something we ran into trouble with in the very beginning of the process. So we have this reservation process, and then once they have written the translation, it gets submitted to our editorial team, and it rests in this queue of translations, of which, you know, there's a screenshot of what the queue looked like at the time when I made the presentation. And then once the translators have the editors have reviewed the translation and it's all good, then they will publish it and it will be visible on our website. And in order to do this review, we have this reverse translation tool that I mentioned. And this is a screenshot of one of our translations here. So you can see on the left-hand column, we have the original English article broken down paragraph by paragraph. Yeah, so it splits each paragraph apart. And then on the right-hand side, we have the translation of that article, in this case into Spanish, again, broken down paragraph by paragraph. And in the middle, what we have is the reverse translation from Spanish back to English. Now, we do have Spanish editors, so they don't necessarily need this tool. But for other languages where we do not have an editor who can speak this language fluently, this is the tool that we use to ensure that all the information in the article is represented in the translation in the exact same order, in the same paragraph, you know, making sure that all the information is the same. And, you know, with machine translation, it gets hard to tell sometimes if the prose of the translation is particularly nice to read or not. So that is a compromise we have to make with the languages that we cannot cover with our editorial team. But it's usually good enough to tell if it's decent. And it's more important to us to ensure that the translations are there and we can reach people and provide free information to them in all of these languages than to limit ourselves by the size of our editorial team, which is quite small. And as a result, now we have translated around 53 translations at the time of making this presentation into 41 languages. That is by far not the entirety of our encyclopedia. There is still a lot of work to be done. But as you've seen, we reach now only 65% of our readers are in English, which considering that 4 years ago, 100% of our readers read in English is quite the change. And we actually expect that within the next few years, we will probably have more people reading our encyclopedia in languages other than English. Because the trend is clearly pointing in that direction. And it fills us with joy because it means more and more and more people around the world can learn about history free of charge, regardless where they are or what their economic situation might be. And that is the end of this little presentation. If there are any questions, I'm here. And yeah, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to present.
Thank you for that wonderful presentation, Jan. I definitely learned a lot, and I can't believe that you guys are translating 41 languages. Oh, that's just incredible to me. I do have a question.
Sure.
Are you planning to expand to any other languages in the near future, or will it determine on the volunteers that are able to help?
It's basically determined by the volunteers. I mean, with 41 languages, we've covered all of the big ones and then many more. But it's basically down to the volunteers. The way it works on our website is that if somebody wants to volunteer to translate an article, they can just click a button that says translate, and then they can choose which language they want to translate into, and then it goes into the queue. And if it gets published, it might add another language. I think the most recent language we added was, oh, sorry, I forgot now. It was not Afrikaans, but something like that. So, sometimes a new language pops up with like one translation. So it's really down to the volunteers.
And if any of our viewers today are interested in volunteering to help translate, is there a link or anything that they can reach you at?
Yeah, sure. I mean, you can go to our website, which is worldhistory.org. And then through the menu, you can go to contribute. And then there's a volunteer link in the main menu through which it takes you to a page where you can see how to sort of apply to become a translator. And it's pretty straightforward. Or you can just go on the website, find an article that you like. Underneath, it says somewhere like, if you want to translate, click here, and you can just do that as well. And our editorial team will get in touch with you with questions if they have any or feedback. But also, I just wanted to take this opportunity to say that we are also always very happy to receive contributions from the scholars and historians who are in the audience on the encyclopedia in English. So should any of you who are here right now want to share your research or your work essentially to a wider audience that is not necessarily purely academic, then we would be very we'd be very happy to have you contribute to the encyclopedia. It doesn't have to be a strictly encyclopedic article. We also publish things that go a little bit more in detail on various topics, really.
And we have one question for you from the audience. You mentioned 5 people on your translation staff, but how many volunteers do you have, and how do you handle different scripts?
Right, so let me answer that one after the other. So first of all, in terms of the translation team, we have one full-time staff member who is on the translation team as essentially the head of translation. She manages all of the volunteers. The other 4 editors are volunteers who invest a significant amount of time into reviewing the translations. And then we have literally several hundred volunteers who translate articles into their languages on a less regular basis. Let's say they translate whenever I have the time. There's no sort of fixed time commitment there. And that's how that's done. Now, in terms of the scripts or alphabets, we basically can support almost anything. Our website is built in Unicode, so it supports, well, most of the scripts of the world, I would say. And it also is right to left compatible. So that was a bit of work we had to do when we received the first Arabic translation. And we made it so that basically our entire website, if the article is in Arabic, for example, the entire website goes right to left. So it's flipped, basically.
It looks like those are all the questions for today. Well, thank you so much for joining us this morning, Jan, and sharing all the work that you've been doing with translations for the articles for World History Encyclopedia.
Well, thank you so much for the invitation. I'm really looking forward to seeing the rest of the conference as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a great day.
You too.
Okay. All right. Well, now we're gonna, let me just share my screen. All right, and now we're going to move on to our first keynote talk of the conference by Dr. Laura Castro-Rojo. Dr. Rojo is an art historian who holds a PhD in mythology, literature, and arts of the Persianate from the University of St. Andrews, Scotland. Dr. Rojo specializes in mythology, literature, and arts of the Persianate. Currently, she is working as a narrative designer and game developer. In addition to our academic and professional pursuits, Dr. Rojo directs a divulgación project called Las Plumas de Semo, where she shares insight about the history, art, and mythology of Iran and Mesopotamia. She is also a member of the research group Historia y Videojuegos 2.0. Unfortunately, Dr. Rojo was unable to join us in person today due to unforeseen circumstances. However, she was committed to ensuring that we didn't miss out on her insights and has pre-recorded her talk for us, which we will be playing for you this morning. And the title of Dr. Rojo's presentation is Under the Shadow of the Huma, Representations of the Achaemenid Culture in Modern Media.
Hi, apologies for the technical difficulties we had earlier. This is David Danzig. I'm going to now start Dr. Rojo's keynote talk. We apologize that we had to first dub it over into English in order to allow our live interpreters then to interpret into Spanish and Arabic. So let me get started right now.
Hello, everyone. Salam, everyone. How are you doing? I'm Dr. Laura Casarroyo.
Let me screen share. Okay, this should be good right here, and I'm going to get Dr. Rojo started right now. Apologies again. It seems we need to start over with my audio on. And here's Dr. Royo.
How are you doing? I'm Dr. Laura Casarroyo, also known as Pluma, in this world of Internet of Things. It's a huge pleasure to be here collaborating with Sasa and being one of the speakers at this event that I found so fun and so interesting at the same time. I would love to begin by thanking the organization for them contacting me and offering me to be one of the speakers, because they showed a big interest in my job, which I'm greatly appreciative for. And it also allows me to do two things that I really love. One of them is talk. I love to talk. And the second one is talk about things that I'm passionate about: history, art, and video games. And also, I am very excited to be joined by so many amazing colleagues, professionals, and friends. So thank you very much to the rest of the participants, to all of you who are listening to me, and the rest of the speakers who will be in this conference. Gondor asked for help. Rohan absolutely responded. So we will do a small introduction about what we're going to look at the next minutes. I'm not going to commit to a number of minutes, because every time I say we're going to talk about for about 45 or 50 minutes, I always go over. So we're going to talk about this topic. Let's Ahura Mazda and their desadas decide how long. But this is going to be very interesting because it talks about us as a society, as consumers of video games, as consumers of history and history of art, as a public with a product. As first representation that I have here surrounding me, we're going to be speaking about how the Achaemenid culture was portrayed in modern media. Not only are we going to speak about video games, why only stop at video games when there are so many things? We're going to be discussing comics, films, video games, of course. And we are going to discuss not only Achaemenids as such, but also the Achaemenid dynasty. This discourse won't be so much focused to historical precision or accuracy with which these products were developed. Why stick to a truthful or real discourse? We're going to be speaking about what does a product need to have to be considered Achaemenic, the modern aesthetic to refer to an Achaemenid culture, and how many intrinsical messages are there, good or bad, or portrayed with this awful thing called Orientalism. When I do my lives, many times people who are watching me count how many times I mention Orientalism. And every time I say the word, I have to drink a sip of my tea. Since I've already said it many times, let me take a few sips. If you want to do that alongside me back at home, please do so. We are also going to be focusing on the most known Iron cities. Any excuse is a good excuse to talk about the Achaemenids. And in general, we will begin by mentioning that the ancient world is wildly popular. Not only the Achaemenids, but the ancient world is quite popular. It's a historical into chapters. The first chapter, who are the Achaemenids? Who are the Achaemenids? Because perhaps many of you don't know them. Achaemenids were a dynasty that ruled what we know as Bozorg, the big Iran community or region, the plains of Iran. And we're going to say that this is in the 6th century of the Common Era. We're not here to dwell into controversy, but this is known as the founder of the Achaemenid dynasty, Pharaoh II the Great. It's quite discussed whether this is very much Achaemenids or very little Achaemenids, but we have no doubt with Darayapush first Dario first, who is the founder of the dynasty. This family, this dynasty, was established in the region of current Iran, and they were expanding, reducing. This was a mobile or dynamic empire until something happens in the 4th century before the Common Era. And this is someone that I'm not really fond of, but I'm always mentioning, Alexander the Great, Iskandar, as he is known in Persian. Up to the year 330 AC, we have the Achaemenids ruling until Alexander the Great arrives there, and he's now willing or wanting to be the king of kings, and ends with the Achaemenid dynasty. In spite of being one of the most influential dynasty in the ancient world, it is true that compared to others, it is not as well known. There's still a lot to study and still a lot to learn of the archaeological excavations, the historical and artistic remains that we still preserve, and perhaps some of the people that you know from this dynasty is Khrushchev-Dork, Cyril First the Great, Darayapush first, Dario for the first, Xerxes, very well known, Xerxes the First, Artaxerxes, names like this one, Cambyses, Bardius, and you're already set into this very good historical drama. It could ring a bell. Certain names could ring a bell for you. But as you say, this is not a masterclass about the Achaemenids. This is not about this. However, I thought it would be very interesting to bring a brief introduction in case any of you don't really know about this. If this is the first time in history that you're listening about this, it's okay. You know how many people have existed throughout this millennia that we don't know that they have existed? It's okay. We're all here to learn. There's nothing to worry about or to be embarrassed about. One of the most influential dynasties in the ancient world that you were like, I don't know about them. It's okay. They're very interesting. You know what? I'm going to be scooping this way. And let me just remain here in the corner throughout our conference so that you can see my slides better, because I'm an art historian, so I have pictures. How many? Yes, many, many of them, and many pictures. My slides have very little text because I love you watching the images and seeing them. So let's focus on what's the absolute earliest source, master in the universe, so to speak, of the Achaemenid aesthetic. Where do we understand the Achaemenid aesthetic? Where did we take it from? Where could we start extracting and building a visual language which later, recreating modern products, could convey Achaemenid culture? That we could say that is without a doubt Persepolis. Persepolis, known in Persian as Taht-e-Hamshid, or the Hamshid throne. You're going to notice that Achaemenids were very practical. So these, alongside China, were the inventors of bureaucracy. And thus in time, they quite didn't like it. So why do I mention this? Because the dynasty of the Parsa is also called the Parsan province, and this city was called Parsa at its time. We could look at this as a lack of originality, or on a practical sense. I think that's more what happened in a practical sense. Leave it up to you. So what was exactly Persepolis? Persepolis was, well, was the ceremonial capital of the Achaemenid Empire and dynasty. It's located in the modern province of Fars in the southeastern region of Iran. I took this picture because it's lovely. I love it. And let's set a map. This is a few pictures of Iran currently, and a big map with a lovely arrow pointing where Persepolis is, so that you can locate the region a bit. It was founded around halfway through the 6th century before the Commune era, approximately 530-550 AC. Dates are not very exact, but Persepolis was not only a capital, you see, in the sense of a city or a palace. Why didn't I realize that I was covering the map? I didn't realize that. I'm sorry, I'm doing too many things over here. So Persepolis was not only a capital city, or was just one city or one palace. It was a whole set of palace territory. It was a huge territory. Compared to others, it was small, but it was completely independent. We have palaces, treasury departments, throne rooms, party rooms, kitchens, administration, management, offices. You found everything here in the city. And it was so important because capitals in the Achaemenid Empire, there were plenty. Pasargada over here, a bit up there, we can see Ecbatana as well, and Susa, a bit near, you can see it right there, next to the V, the 8th, which were the provinces of the Achaemenid Empire, but the capital was Persepolis. However, the Achaemenid Empire had plenty of capitals. They were switching. However, Persepolis was always the ceremonial and spiritual capital. We might say the one that contained the imperial message, the best, better than any other city. Emperor of the city, Darius I, Darius first, who had a very clear message. Together we are stronger. And actually it was that unity through the diversity, which is represented all throughout their art. You can see a few images here. I'm going to disappear for a bit. I'm already invisible so that you can see the pictures. The most important thing for Persepolis is that the place we could extract the most content, visual content, is there. We can use this visual content to recreate something that we might consider Achaemenid. What do I mean by this? Persepolis was going to be the reference in capital letters of all of the products that we will see. Is that the only one? No, we have other archaeological sites that I've mentioned. The problem is that they're not as preserved or as well preserved and have been shattered as, for example, the palace complexes of Susa, Ecbatana city, and also think about objects that are found in museums. But we might say that Persepolis is the main focus of a visual reference that creators would look for, the ones that they were trying to develop something, reminding us of an Achaemenid reminiscence. If you are interested in this, you can ask, but how true is this? How true is this in the recreations? Do we have something similar? Well, fortunately for all of us, now we do have that. The Getty Museum has organized, or a while, organized not long ago, 2 years ago, a virtual reconstruction of Persepolis called Persepolis Reimagined. And it is fabulous because it has a lot of material so that you, and this is totally free by the way, you can enter into Persepolis Reimagined via your websites and you can enter this amazing exhibit and you can see all of the recreation, which is very good quality. There's an amazing job behind all of this, which I think for the dissemination of the culture, this is wonderful because we can compare how what we have been sold as Achaemenid is really similar or not to what happened in reality. So this is a site that I visit constantly in my own lives because I believe it to be amazingly useful for many purposes. And you can see a comparison of the original pictures. This is the gate. He's built this original gate, one of my favorite characters. This is what happens when you study history of art. You end up having favorite kings, favorite deities, and of course, your worst enemies characters. So here we have these bulls, which are the bulls from the front part of the Gate of the Nations, and in the Getty reconstruction, you see how they would have looked like. And this is a polychrome design. Perhaps you've heard about this plenty, because I'm sure that you know the ancient world very well, but we can repeat it if I haven't mentioned it. Ancient world is light in color. They love Getty, and if you click in this little rosette at the center, it can show you the bigger picture. And of course, this is joined by historical texts that could explain a bit about what you're looking at and why does it look this way. And Getty doesn't pay me to advertise this, but this is very well done. This is incredibly beneficiary that we have it. Those of us who dedicate or work with Iranian culture to see how it was truly the case. You can see this red column painted with red, but this was like a red. I mean, this is not just like a crimson layer or thin layer. This is a bright red that really pops to the eye. You can see balls painted in blue, and all of the texture had a polychrome surface, all of them, which was really important. And actually, archaeological missions that are currently working at Persepolis, for example, the one called Sapienza di Roma, I think that it's from the Rome University. They're working on this, finding pigment in these statues. These means in the texture. So these means that there's archaeological evidence that this was painted in very bright colors, and this is the organization to safekeep ancient world. Let's safekeep an ancient world filled with color, because this sand and beige like ancient world is not really favorable. And plus, if we're dealing with things like Orientalism and other currents, then we're in a pickle. So let's begin with the first product of representations of Achaemenid aesthetic, and let's do this with an Iranian comic. Takhte Yubidan. Takhte Yubidan means the eternal throne, the immortal throne. And this story is focused in this kind gentleman you can see in the cover of the comic. That is no other than Alexander the Great, that scandal. And after conquering Persepolis, well, let me give you maybe other kinds of facts, because I'm getting excited. I look at him and I'm nervous. I cannot avoid it. But let me tell you, Tati Yubidan is a comic of the Iranian study, Yurak study, which was published in 2020, and tells the story of Iskandar, Alexander the Great, after the destruction of Persepolis, because the state was brought to dust or reduced to dust, and it was his obsession to find the source of eternal youth, the source of eternal life. And this was something very interesting, because it makes two narrative lines. This obsession of Alexander the Great not to die. I am sorry, I don't control Iskandar's figure outside of the Iranian context, but in the literary context was like the RPG players, the main quest. The main quest is his mission. Iskandar has a lot of books written about him, and he spends his life searching for the source of eternal youth and how not to die. The comic, and it sounds a bit stupid, this issue or this idea, how not to die, but that's what he does. And actually, comic is very interesting because it greatly supports its narrative in the oniric dimension, the world of dreams, the nightmares that Iskander has after having ravished Persepolis. And it does an exploration about how his tortured mind may be able to find a solution, supposedly the source of eternal youth. And what really catches our attention is this mixture narrative supports its basis in the world of dreams, in this obsession and blame of Alexander the Great for having destroyed Persepolis. And what really gets just our attention, for example, is the election of aesthetic. You can clearly see that there has been an observation and a direct copy of the real structure at Persepolis. Here, for example, you can see that right next to it, we have different ministers. I'm sorry, not ministers, ambassadors that are here presenting offerings to the King of Kings. I'm disappearing once again. Here you can see how they take all of the depictions, and we can see a King of Kings in the throne in between two columns with this famous bulls, not only from Persepolis, but the one you have in the real photography, that is at the Louvre. That is not Persepolis. However, it's from Susa. But so that you can see something that's pretty well related to the Achaemenid world, the bulls. If we go back for a bit, just a bit, not way back, here, we can see how the comic's cover is already providing so many details about the narrative line. And of course, none of this is innocent. All of these products want to send a message. Persepolis is completely destroyed, and the element of ruin is very important. The role of ruin, always surrounded Iskander, is fundamental. That's the main focus of the narrative. Ruin, this ruinous state of the city, can be due to two reasons: that they're literally copying. Here you can see that with this door. It happens. It's like that. Even the parts that are missing in the upper right corner, for example, there's a small piece that's missing from there. And in the cover of the comic, you can see the exact same detail. Is the same fragment that's missing. So this was Alexander in a natural state, a natural observation, and a very clear message, which is Alexander was savage. Alexander was, well, in the Iranian literary world, there are only two approaches to what Iskander did. One of these approaches was that he was a hero, the same size or level than other heroes which appear in the epic literature. For example, Feridun, the King of Kings in the Book of Kings, Gashob, he's an hero as well of the Zoroastrianism tradition. They're people who place Alexander at the same level, relevant, and other people who don't. There are people who think that Alexander could have just stayed home, just keeping a package of matches before releasing it in Persepolis. But the destruction of Persepolis was not only a destruction, it was a fire. This is a stone that burns really easily. And this kind of stone still have several marks of this fire. And if you anytime have the chance to visit Persepolis, you can see the limestone that really makes up the context and the territory. You can see these white lines that stretch all throughout the limestone there. And this is quite evident, or it's a very strong archaeological evidence of what happened there. And as you can see, this comic references to Persepolis are based on archaeological studies and sites. And with this, what I mean is that by being Iranian artists, that they have more access to archaeological remains at Persepolis, because all of these pictures I've taken it from the internet, and there's very good quality pictures from it. And I think archaeologists wanted to emphasize the archaeological ruins of Takht Mashid, and it is possible to an easier visual connection with the audience. Horak Studios know that the people who will be reading the comic are Iranian, and it is more simple to connect with images that they've already set in their cultural, imaginary, or unconscious, such as the bulls over there, or, for example, the representatives of different embassies bringing offerings to the king. As I said, this could be considered historicist content more than historical content, because it is a fiction story showing us the dreams of Iskander. But I think that it was very interesting to go to the original source and copy it. And I'm saying copying it not as something negative. That's not negative. Copying an archaeological site that you want to portray as accurately as possible, because it contributes to the narrative that you're using, presenting a completely devastated Persepolis under the hands of someone who has a doubtful reputation, so to speak, in the Iranian world. We won't be giving out notes. This is not a casting. This is not a contest. I do not wish to mention that something was good, was bad, but it's true that there's a message. How can I explain this without listening too strambotic? All of the narrative has a message behind it. There is no innocent narrative. What this comic wants to do is to condemn the figure of Eskandar. It's not good or bad. It wants to set a particular idea for the audience so that the audience looks at him from their perspective. Why do I mention this? Because narrative is not innocent and all products respond to a message. We have talked about that Yavidan, and we are going to be talking about the products that I love talking about. Not necessarily because this is something good, but ladies, gentlemen, and other creatures of the night with you, Assassin's Creed Odyssey. I want to disclaim something. I'm not going to be discussing game mechanics, not talking about anything other than aesthetic and narrative, because I'm a personal big fan of the Assassin's Creed saga, although from the previous versions, I am the greater fan of the first version that's based in Delamotte's novel, and the original I love. However, unfortunately, Assassin's Creed Odyssey has a very big problem. That is that Assassin's Creed Odyssey is very Orientalist. So much. Oh, so much. It has a representation of the Achaemenids, which aesthetically we could say there was research done. There was a lot of research. For example, we have the images of the capitals right there, which are really well revealed using different archaeological references which are real, and we have none other than the immortals of the Palace of Susa. These are the immortals. Don't worry, we'll be discussing other immortals. Because yeah, how can we not mention these other immortals? I was so excited to do this presentation. So we can see them portrayed or copied as they were. As you can see in the images up here, one of the buildings that show up in this game. And let's see, we're not going to be exactly discussing Assassin's Creed Odyssey. However, we're going to be discussing their DLC, their downloadable content, which is more than questionable in their representation of the Achaemenid dynasty, at least the way that the Achaemenids are portrayed in the narrative. I'm going to show you another image I really love because I'm in the middle. Disappear, Plumas. As you can see, these are two representations of a special Xerxes guard. The one you can see touching his beard with a reflexive look is Xerxes I, no list, and two soldiers at his side that we deduce that we can assume are immortals. As you can see, are Lamasus and also a Go-Righton and quote-unquote sphinxes of Persepolis, so that you can see that there's a lot of aesthetical elements that have been kept that they are carrying on their heads. As you can see, Lamasu had the exact same cover on their heads. These decoration on their heads depicted or portrayed detail that's quite interesting about copying such small details. For example, the beard of the immortal that we can see, the one that's furthest back, is copying as such dots that you can see over there of the first layers of what would be the hair of the beard. So on a historical reconstruction level, they did a great job, and there are a lot of references for the head that Xerxes could have used. These could be clothes that Xerxes could have worn on his day-to-day. However, does not pay me. But if you've ever played this DLC, that big effort that was clearly set for the universe of the Iranians of the Achaemenid dynasty, we've seen the clothes, we've seen the architecture, we've seen the decor, and many things. You can see right behind me, you have evidence that there has been a big emphasis, a detailed research of archaeological originals to portray it in the game. Actually, Assassin's Creed, they pride themselves on having a group of PhDs in history, historians, archaeologists that help them develop their products. That's great so far. But however, it seems that now all of the effort went to the artists, because when we go to the narrative plane, let's say that the very well portrayed, very well portrayed, one of the first products that I find a bit dangerous. Why? Because you're thinking on another one. Wars. 300 is not wars. 300 has a very clear intention. 300 never ever wanted or had been sent by Zack Snyder himself. What happens? Assassin's Creed, one of its sales and marketing arguments or feature is the quality of historical accuracy, a care to the detail and attention while portraying historical processes. Of course, it happens, however, that if you love Achaemenid, so like Achaemenid culture, don't play this representation, because the thing is, how can I say this without me just seeming very questionable character, which I understand could have been very questionable in the eyes of the Greeks. Where this happens after the medieval wars and the Peloponnese, for example, it has a very Persian. Hellenics, for example, Spartans, Athenians, Stevenus, all of those towns started because the important thing was